The Double Down Cantina on Nexus Station was an infamous hub of galactic diversity, a melting pot where beings of all shapes, sizes, and temperaments converged. The air hummed with the low thrum of alien languages, laughter, and clinking glasses. Flickering holographic advertisements offered drinks from every known quadrant, and the dim lighting provided a veneer of secrecy for all who entered. Amid this controlled chaos, two towering Stovax brothers, Ulrich and Thran, sat at a corner table, nursing drinks far too strong for most other species. The Stovax were a predator species hailing from Zarnak Prime, a death world known for its hostile environment. Their lizard-like frames were covered in natural armor, and their strength was unmatched among most sapients. Nexus Station tolerated their presence, barely. Thanks to the Galactic Accords. Ulrich leaned forward, his scaled fingers drumming on the table. "Thran, look at that lot," he said, motioning toward a group entering the cantina. "New arrivals. Haven't seen their kind before." Thran turned his yellow, slit-pupil eyes toward the newcomers. They were tall but lean, with gangly limbs and unassuming builds. Their jumpsuits bore mottled green patterns and a patch on the shoulder, a brown bird perched on a silver globe. No scales, no claws, no power armor. Hardly a threat, or so it seemed. "Humans," Ulrich muttered with a smirk. "I've heard of them. Fragile, soft-skinned creatures. Easy pickings." He nudged his brother. "Should we welcome them properly?" Thran's lips curled into a grin. It would be rude not to. The humans, unaware of the scrutiny, approached the bar, their laughter and chatter cutting through the ambient noise. One of them, a dark-skinned figure with a commanding air and an insignia on his uniform, 3 chevrons stacked with 2 arches beneath, stepped forward to order drinks. As he waited, he lit a slender tube, exhaling fragrant smoke into the air. The Stovax brothers rose and approached, their hulking forms parting the crowd. Ulrich stopped just short of the humans, his voice a low rumble. "This bar's for established species. Newcomers have to pay a toll." The humans turned to face the threat, their laughter fading. The leader, still holding his smoke tube, eyed the Stovax. "A toll, huh?" he said, his voice calm but firm. "And who decides that?" "We do," Thran said, stepping closer. "Humans, they say you never win fights. Maybe you should leave before you embarrass yourselves." The human's lips twitched into a faint smile. "You're right. Humans never win fights." He took a long drag from his tube, the glowing cherry casting a brief light on his face. "But we're not in the habit of running either." The other humans, standing just behind their leader, shifted slightly. Not in retreat, but in preparation. Their relaxed postures belied a readiness that the Stovax failed to notice. "Is that a challenge?" Ulrich growled, stepping forward. He was a head taller than the tallest human, his clawed hands flexing. The human leader blew out a plume of smoke, his voice steady. "Not a challenge. A fact. You want our money? Come and take it." The cantina went silent. Patrons edged away from the brewing conflict, some slipping out the door. The barkeep ducked behind the counter, muttering about inevitable damages. Ulrich roared and swung a massive fist at the human leader, but the man sidestepped with surprising speed. Before the Stovax could recover, the humans moved as one. It wasn't a fair fight. Not in the way most species defined fairness. The Stovax were stronger, faster, and heavily armored. But the humans fought with precision and coordination, their movements honed by years of training. They didn't rely on brute strength. Instead, they used leverage, timing, and teamwork. One human distracted Thran with a feint, while another swept his legs out from under him. Ulrich, enraged, charged at the leader, only to find himself flipped onto his back with a well-placed maneuver. The fight was over in minutes. The Stovax brothers lay groaning on the floor, their pride as bruised as their bodies. The humans, though sporting a few cuts and bruises, were still standing. The leader knelt by Ulrich, removing the smoke tube from his mouth. "Humans never win fights," he said quietly. "But we're very good at not losing them." The aftermath of the bar fight spread like wildfire through Nexus Station. The humans' resilience, both unexpected and unsettling, became the talk of every corridor and cantina. Despite the calm demeanor the Marines had exhibited after the scuffle, whispers painted them as dangerously unpredictable. Gunny Sands, the dark-skinned leader of the human group, knew the rumors could cause more trouble. Sitting in a small, sparsely furnished room they had rented on the station, he looked over his team. Corporal Reyes had a split lip and a bruised shoulder, Private Ellis nursed a sprained wrist, and Sergeant Novak's knuckles were raw from punching through scaled armor. Yet they all seemed unbothered, laughing quietly as Ellis mimicked the Stovax's overdramatic fall. "Enough," Sands said, his voice cutting through the room. The Marines fell silent, their eyes turning to their leader. "We're not here to play games. The fight's done, but you've seen how things work on this station. We're outsiders. They'll test us again, and next time, it won't be drunk lizard brutes." Novak frowned. "What's our move, Gunny? Can't just walk around looking soft. We'll get swarmed." "We're not looking soft," Sands replied. He tapped the patch on his shoulder, the insignia of Earth's Marine Corps. "We're showing that humans are worth respecting. That doesn't mean starting fights, but it does mean finishing them." "Understood." The Marines nodded. Sands leaned back, the faint glow of the station's artificial lighting casting long shadows across the room. He knew the station's politics were more dangerous than its physical threats. Nexus wasn't just a hub of commerce. It was a crucible of alliances, power plays, and under-the-table deals. Being seen as a problem could make them targets, but showing too much deference could invite exploitation. The balance was precarious. 2 days after the cantina fight, Sands and his team were walking through the crowded marketplace when a piercing alarm echoed through the station. Red lights flashed as automated voices announced a containment breach. "Sector C4, Ellis read from a nearby terminal. Emergency lockdown in progress. Hazard level, extreme." "What kind of breach?" Novak asked, already scanning the crowd for signs of danger. "Doesn't say," Sands replied. "But whatever it is, it's bad. Everyone's clearing out." As the marketplace emptied, a new figure emerged from the chaos. Tall, cloaked, and flanked by heavily armed guards, the figure exuded authority. It was Director Calvis, the station's head administrator. Her pale, angular face was set in a grim expression as she strode directly toward the humans. "Sergeant Sands," she said, her tone clipped, "I understand your team has a knack for handling unconventional threats. You're going to prove it now." Sands raised an eyebrow. "We're not mercenaries, Director. What's going on?" "A containment breach," Calvis replied. "An experimental weapon shipment was compromised. If it spreads beyond C4, the entire station is at risk. My security teams are already overwhelmed, and I need immediate action. You want us to clean up your mess?" Novak said, bristling. "I want you to prove that humans are more than barroom brawlers." Calvis shot back. "You'll be compensated, of course. But make no mistake, Sergeant Sands. If you refuse, your presence here will become untenable." Sands studied her for a moment, then glanced at his team. "What are we dealing with?" Calvis hesitated. "The weapon is a nanite-based biocontainment device. It was designed to neutralize hostile entities, but it's unstable. The breach has already infected 3 sectors. If we don't stop it, it will consume everything." Sands sighed, his jaw tightening. "Give us access to your schematics and a clear route to C4. We'll handle it." Calvis nodded, motioning for one of her guards to hand Sands a data tablet. You have 2 hours. After that, containment measures will escalate to full atmospheric purge. The schematics showed a labyrinth of corridors leading to the containment zone, now marked with hazard warnings. The nanites weren't just a technical problem. They adapted to threats, targeting anything perceived as hostile. Traditional weapons would be ineffective. We'll need to isolate the central node and disable it manually, Reyes said. It's a 2-person job minimum. 1 to operate the failsafe, 1 to hold off the swarm. They entered C4 through an emergency access hatch, the air thick with static energy. The walls were slick with a silvery, pulsating film, the nanites spreading their influence. Lights flickered, and the faint hum of machinery was overlaid by an eerie, organic chittering. The Marines moved in formation, their movements synchronized and deliberate. The first wave of nanites came as a rolling cloud. Ellis and Novak fired suppressive bursts from modified energy rifles, creating temporary barriers that slowed the swarm. Reyes and Sands pushed forward to the central node. The node was a spherical device suspended in the center of a containment chamber, its surface alive with shifting patterns. Reyes set to work bypassing encryption to access the failsafe. Sands stood guard as the chittering grew louder. Almost there, Reyes said. We don't have 30 seconds, Ellis called. They're breaching. The swarm poured in. Sands fired in controlled bursts. Reyes slammed a control panel, and the node emitted a blinding pulse. The nanites froze, then disintegrated into dust. Calvis gave a curt nod. Perhaps humans are worth respecting after all. Sands lit another smoke tube. We're just good at not losing. Let's go. The human success in neutralizing the nanite breach spread rapidly, but instead of cementing respect, it ignited a firestorm of suspicion among Nexus Station's inhabitants. Whispers about humanity's uncanny ability to survive even the direst circumstances fueled paranoia. For some species, it was admiration cloaked in fear. For others, it was an excuse to act against what they saw as a growing threat. Director Calvis called Sands and his team to her private quarters 3 days after the breach. Her chambers, a stark contrast to the utilitarian station, were a blend of organic curves and shimmering light. But the atmosphere was tense. Her guards' hands hovered over their weapons as the Marines entered. Sergeant Sands, Calvis began, her tone devoid of pleasantries. There's been a development. She gestured to a hologram projecting a grainy video feed. It showed a council chamber, where representatives of various species argued vehemently. The Stovax delegation has demanded your immediate expulsion from Nexus Station, citing your reckless aggression and disruption of galactic harmony. We saved their damn station, Novak growled, but Sands silenced him with a glance. Why are we still here, then? Sands asked. Calvis' expression tightened. Because others are defending your actions. They see potential in humanity, as allies, innovators, even protectors. But the Stovax hold significant influence. They've challenged your right to stay, and the Council has agreed to arbitration. Reyes frowned. Arbitration? What does that mean? Calvis sighed. A trial of accord. A contest to determine whether your species is an asset or a liability. Refusal is not an option. Sands leaned forward. What kind of trial? It's fluid. The Stovax propose the terms, but you'll have input. Typically, it's a mix of physical, strategic, and ethical challenges. They're designed to test the core strengths of each species. And when do we start? Sands asked. Tomorrow. Calvis hesitated. Sergeant, if you fail, humanity will be barred from Nexus Station and potentially blacklisted by the Galactic Accord. Your future in the stars depends on this. Sands met her gaze. Then we'd better not fail. The trial was held in the Grand Concourse, a massive arena built to accommodate spectators from every species. The first challenge was a test of endurance, navigating a simulated death world environment designed to break even the hardiest warriors. Towering fungal forests exhaled clouds of corrosive spores, while predators stalked from the shadows. "Stay tight," Sands ordered as his team entered the simulation. Eyes on each other and the mission objective. The objective was simple: retrieve a beacon located deep within the hostile environment. But the execution was anything but. The air burned with toxins, and every step triggered traps, hidden pits, electrified vines, and more. A six-legged predator leapt from the canopy, snarling, but Novak dispatched it with a precise shot to its throat. Reyes spotted the beacon first. It was perched on a cliffside, guarded by a swarm of mechanical drones. "Gunny, this looks like a setup," she muttered. "It's always a setup," Sands replied. "Reyes, Novak, cover us. Ellis, you're with me. We'll grab it fast." The drones activated as soon as they moved, firing energy bolts that sizzled through the air. Sands and Ellis sprinted for the beacon, dodging fire, while the others laid down suppressing shots. Ellis reached it first, yanking it free just as a drone clipped her shoulder. She stumbled, but Sands hauled her to her feet, and they retreated under covering fire. As they exited the simulation, the crowd erupted in cheers and jeers. The Stovac's representatives glared down from their viewing platform, unimpressed. The second challenge was one of strategy, a war game pitting the humans against the Stovacs in a simulated battle. The battlefield was a holographic projection, the terrain shifting with each move. Sands and his team worked seamlessly, their military training giving them an edge in adaptability. "They're using brute force," Novak observed as the Stovacs concentrated their forces in a single, overwhelming push. "No subtlety." "That's their strength," Sands replied. "But it's also their weakness. Let them overextend." The human strategy was surgical: divide and conquer. They used feints and ambushes to whittle down the Stovacs' forces, exploiting their lack of flexibility. By the end, the Stovacs' commander, a grizzled warrior with scars across his snout, was forced to concede. The crowd murmured in surprise. Few had expected the humans to prevail. The final challenge was the most daunting, an ethical dilemma. Both teams were presented with a scenario involving a colony ship in distress. Limited resources meant that only half the passengers could be saved, and each team had to decide who would live and who would die. The Stovacs chose quickly, prioritizing the strongest and most valuable passengers. The humans, however, debated fiercely. "We can't just leave the weaker ones to die," Ellis argued. "That's not who we are. If we spread resources too thin, we'll lose everyone," Novak countered. "We have to make the hard call." Sands listened to both sides, his expression grim. Finally, he spoke. "We save as many as we can. No arbitrary lines. Everyone gets a chance, and we'll make it work." Their decision was chaotic, messy, and far from perfect, but it was human. The judges deliberated for what felt like hours before rendering their verdict. In the end, humanity prevailed. The council ruled in their favor, acknowledging their resilience, ingenuity, and ethical complexity. The Stovacs delegation stormed out, vowing retaliation, but the humans had won a critical victory. As Sands and his team prepared to leave the arena, Calvis approached. For the first time, her expression softened. "You've earned your place here," she said. "Don't waste it." Sands nodded. "We're not here to win fights," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "Just to survive them." As they walked away, the cheers of the crowd followed them, a reminder that humanity's journey among the stars had only just begun.